You know the scene. Saturday morning. Grocery store parking lot. Sun bouncing off chrome. A row of trucks lined up like a dealership display. Ford F-150. Ram 1500. Chevy Silverado. All spotless. Not a scratch in the bed. No dirt on the tires. No hitch marks on the bumper. The beds are empty. Completely empty. Meanwhile, the owners are loading 2 grocery bags and a case of bottled water into the back seat, because the bed cover is locked and they don't want anything sliding around. You see trucks like this everywhere. Suburbs, office parks, apartment complexes. Massive machines built to haul lumber, tow trailers, climb muddy job sites, spending 99% of their life commuting to work and sitting in a parking lot. There's actually a name truck enthusiasts use for them. Pavement Princess. A truck built for work that never touches dirt. And here's the uncomfortable part. That shiny, spotless truck sitting in the grocery store parking lot. For a lot of middle-class households, it's quietly destroying their wealth. Hey, I'm Brian, and I spend way too much time thinking about the small financial decisions that quietly keep people stuck working longer than they need to. And the modern pickup truck might be one of the most effective wealth destruction machines ever sold to people who consider themselves financially responsible. Not because trucks are bad, not because nobody needs them, but because over the last 30 years, the auto industry transformed a practical working tool into a luxury identity product, while convincing millions of middle-class buyers that it's still a normal, practical purchase. And the numbers behind that shift are brutal. We're talking about a single vehicle choice that can quietly absorb 25 to 35% of someone's take-home income and erase 6 figures of potential wealth over time. In other words, the Pavement Princess trap isn't about trucks. It's about how a product designed to signal capability ends up costing you years of financial freedom. And if you enjoy thinking about money the way scientists think about experiments, hit subscribe. Think of it as peer review. Because today we're going to break down exactly how this trap works and why it's so hard to see when you're standing in that same grocery store parking lot. To understand how we got here, you have to rewind a few decades. Back to 1990, pickup trucks were tools. Simple machines designed for contractors, farmers, and small business owners who actually needed to haul things. A brand new Ford F-150 in 1990 had a starting price around $14,000. Adjusted for inflation, that's roughly $32,000 in today's dollars. Bench seats, vinyl floors, manual windows, steel wheels. These were work vehicles. Nobody bought them to impress their neighbors. Back then, if you wanted comfort, you bought a sedan. Something like the Toyota Camry or the Honda Accord. Trucks were loud, rough, basic. But something started changing in the late 1990s. Manufacturers realized something important. Trucks had higher profit margins than cars, so they started adding features. Extended cabs first, then crew cabs. Suddenly the back seat could actually hold adults. Leather interiors appeared, premium sound systems, navigation screens. By the early 2000s, trucks weren't just tools anymore. They were daily drivers. The transformation accelerated in 2009 when Ford Motor Company introduced the Ford F-150 Platinum. Essentially a luxury vehicle with a truck bed, and buyers loved it. By the mid-2010s, the market exploded with ultra-premium trims like the Ford F-150 Raptor and the Ram 1500 Limited. Massive touchscreens, panoramic sunroofs, heated and ventilated seats, adaptive cruise control. The average new pickup price kept climbing. $25,000, then $35,000, and $45,000. Today, the average full-size pickup transaction price in the U.S. sits around $58,000, and high-end trims can easily cross $80,000 or even $95,000, which means something subtle happened. The truck didn't stop being marketed as a work vehicle, but it quietly became one of the most expensive consumer products the middle class regularly buys. And here's the key twist. While the price of trucks doubled and tripled, the actual usage didn't. Multiple industry surveys have shown that most pickup owners use their truck bed fewer than a dozen times per year, fewer than 12, which means millions of people are driving around in a vehicle designed to haul lumber and tow construction equipment, to transport laptops, gym bags, and groceries, like the scene in that parking lot we started with. And once you run the math on that decision, the Pavement Princess trap starts to look a lot less harmless. If you're new here and just subscribed, comment your name below. I read every comment and shout out new subscribers in my next video. I do appreciate you joining me on this finance journey. Let's walk through a realistic example. Imagine someone earning $75,000 a year. After taxes, that's roughly $4,800 a month hitting their bank account. Pretty normal middle-class income. Now imagine that person walks into a dealership and buys a $62,000 pickup truck. Something like a nicely equipped Chevrolet Silverado 1500 or Ram 1500. They put $5,000 down. They finance the rest for 6 years at around 7%. That creates a monthly payment of roughly $980. But the payment isn't the real cost. Insurance for a full-size truck often lands around $190 per month. Fuel is higher too. These trucks average about 18 miles per gallon. With normal commuting, that's about $260 a month in gas. Maintenance, tires, registration, and repairs add another $135 monthly when averaged out. Now add those numbers together. $980 for the payment, $190 for insurance, $260 for fuel, $135 for maintenance. That's $1,565 per month from a $4,800 take-home income, which means this single vehicle is consuming about 33% of your net income. Just transportation. Financial planners usually suggest keeping total transportation costs under about 10 to 15% of take-home pay. So this one truck is more than double that guideline. And that's just the monthly picture. Let's zoom out. Over 6 years, those payments and operating costs total about $112,000. But the real damage is the opportunity cost. If that same money had been invested into a simple index fund earning 8% annually, something tracking the S&P 500, for example, the foregone investment growth pushes the true wealth impact even higher. Now we're looking at roughly $150,000 of lost financial progress tied to one vehicle decision. One truck, parked in a driveway. Most of its life spent commuting to an office or sitting in a grocery store parking lot with a perfectly clean truck bed, just like the one we started this video with. So if the math is this brutal, why does the Pavement Princess trap keep working? Why are parking lots still full of $70,000 trucks with spotless beds? Because the trap isn't financial first. It's psychological. And the industry has gotten extremely good at pulling 5 very specific levers in your brain. The first lever is what I call identity purchase. A pickup truck doesn't just sell transportation. It sells a version of you. Look at the marketing for trucks like the Ford F-150 Raptor or the Ram 1500 TRX. The ads are never about commuting to the office. They show trucks blasting through deserts, towing massive trailers, climbing rocky mountain trails. The message is subtle but powerful. Buy this truck, and you're the kind of person who could do those things. You might never haul lumber. You might never tow a boat. But owning the truck signals capability, ruggedness, self-reliance. It's identity in physical form, which is why you'll see a spotless truck in a corporate office parking lot with a lift kit, off-road tires, and auxiliary lights that have never illuminated anything more rugged than a Starbucks drive-thru. The purchase isn't about what you do. It's about who you feel like you are. And identity purchases are incredibly sticky, because selling the truck later feels like giving up part of that identity. That's mechanism number 1. Now layer on mechanism number 2, social normalization. If you live in a suburb, drive through a typical neighborhood, and count trucks in driveways, you'll see Chevrolet Silverado, Ford F-150, and Ram 1500 everywhere. Once something becomes common, your brain stops evaluating it. It just labels it normal. If every third driveway has a full-size pickup, it no longer feels like a luxury purchase. It feels like the default. Nobody stops and thinks, wait, that vehicle costs more than some people's annual rent. Instead, the thought becomes, well, everyone has one. And once a purchase becomes socially normal, resisting it feels like opting out of the group. Which is why the grocery store parking lot scene we started with feels so ordinary. Rows and rows of trucks. Completely normalized. The third lever is payment illusion. Dealerships almost never talk about total cost. They talk about the monthly number. You walk into a dealership looking at a $62,000 truck. The salesperson doesn't start with that number. Instead, you hear something like this. Good news, we can get you into this truck for $875 a month. Notice what just happened. Your brain stopped evaluating the truck as a $62,000 purchase and started evaluating it as an $875 lifestyle subscription. That framing dramatically lowers the psychological barrier. And once financing terms stretch to 72 or even 84 months, that monthly number starts looking manageable. Until you stack it with insurance, fuel, maintenance, and the rest of life. But by that point, the purchase decision has already been made. Now comes mechanism number 4, sunk cost customization. The moment someone buys a truck, a whole new spending ecosystem opens up. Lift kits, off-road tires, bed liners, light bars, step rails, exhaust upgrades, tonneau covers. You'll see someone drop $3,000 on wheels, another $2,500 on suspension, maybe $1,200 for oversized tires. Each upgrade deepens the emotional investment, because now it's not just a truck. It's your truck, your build, your project. And the more money poured into modifications, the harder it becomes psychologically to step back and ask whether the original purchase made sense. Which brings us to the final and most dangerous mechanism, the negative equity trap. Modern trucks depreciate fast. Drive a $62,000 truck off the lot, and it can lose $8,000 to $10,000 in value almost immediately. But because most people finance for 6 or 7 years, the loan balance falls much more slowly than the vehicle value. Which means for a long stretch of ownership, you owe more than the truck is worth. That's called being underwater. Now fast forward 3 or 4 years. A new model comes out. New interior, bigger screen, updated styling. Suddenly your current truck feels outdated. So you go back to the dealership, and the salesperson says something that sounds helpful but is actually financially devastating. We'll roll your remaining balance into the new loan. In other words, the negative equity from your current truck gets added to the price of the next one. Now the new loan might be $72,000 on a $65,000 truck. The cycle resets. New payment, new depreciation curve, and a deeper hole, which is how someone earning a perfectly respectable middle-class income ends up stuck making $1,500 plus monthly transportation payments for years, all while driving a truck whose bed is still spotless. Just like that row of pavement princesses sitting quietly in the grocery store parking lot. Now zoom out for a second, because the real cost of the pavement princess trap doesn't show up in a monthly payment. It shows up over decades. Imagine 2 families living on the same street, same neighborhood, same schools, same combined household income of $130,000. Family 1 buys what feels normal in their environment, a new full-size truck, something like a well-equipped Ford F-150. Maybe there's also a second SUV in the driveway. Their truck costs about $1,500 a month once you include payments, insurance, fuel, and maintenance. That's roughly $18,000 a year going toward one vehicle. Family 2 makes a different decision. They buy a reliable used sedan or crossover, something practical like a Toyota Camry or a Honda CR-V. Their total transportation cost lands closer to $6,000 a year. Same income, same neighborhood, same middle-class life. But now there's a $12,000 difference every single year. If Family 2 invests that difference into a simple index fund tracking something like the S&P 500, earning an average 8% annually, the gap compounds fast. After 10 years, that difference grows to around $180,000. After 20 years, it's approaching $900,000, almost $1 million. Not because one family was reckless, and not because the other family lived some extreme frugal lifestyle. Both families would describe themselves the exact same way. Middle class. The only visible difference is what's parked in the driveway. One driveway looks impressive. The other investment account becomes impressive. Now here's the strange part. The practical alternative already exists. If you actually need a truck a few times a year, moving furniture, hauling materials, towing something, you can simply rent one. Home improvement stores and rental companies offer pickup truck rentals for around $40 to $70 per day. Even if you rented a truck 12 times a year, which is about how often many owners actually use their truck beds, you'd spend roughly $1,200 to $1,500 annually. Compare that with the $18,000 per year ownership cost we just walked through. That's a $16,000 difference every single year. So why don't more people do this? Because renting a truck solves the utility problem, but it doesn't solve the identity problem. A rented truck doesn't sit in your driveway. It doesn't signal capability. It doesn't look impressive in that grocery store parking lot we started with. And that's the quiet truth behind the pavement princess trap. Most of the time, the truck isn't purchased for what it does. It's purchased for what it says. If you want to break out of the trap, the first step is awareness. Start with a simple experiment. For the next 90 days, track every single time you actually use your vehicle for truck-specific tasks. Hauling materials, moving large items, towing something. Be brutally honest. Most people discover that number is shockingly small. Next, calculate the true cost of ownership the way we did earlier: payment, insurance, fuel, maintenance, depreciation. Not just the monthly loan number. Then run one uncomfortable thought experiment. Take that monthly transportation cost and imagine investing it for 20 years at the historical average return of the S&P 500. Visualize the account balance that could exist instead of the truck. And finally, ask yourself a brutally honest question. Is this purchase solving a practical problem or an identity problem? Because when you strip everything away, that's the real decision sitting in that grocery store parking lot. The world is full of impressive driveways, huge trucks, perfect paint, spotless beds that have never touched a bag of concrete. But the truly interesting houses are the ones with unimpressive driveways and extremely impressive investment accounts. Because one of those choices buys you a vehicle, the other buys you time. And time, not horsepower, not leather seats, not a 6-inch lift kit, is the one asset you can never finance your way into later.